Please read the disclaimer. President Trump just did the unthinkable. Hello, beautiful people. Shalom, money makers. He actually did two unthinkable things. We're going to get straight into it. First, the President Trump announces he is going to be suing JP Morgan. This is a front page article in the fake news Wall Street Journal states, without any verification, that President Trump offered Jamie Dimon of JP Morgan Chase the job of Fed chairman. This statement is totally untrue. Okay. And he's going to also be suing them in the next 2 weeks for debanking him after the situation that happened, right, on January 6th. He goes in and says all kinds of things that I don't know how the algorithm is going to eat. Why wouldn't the Wall Street Journal call me back to ask whether or not such an offer was made? I would have very quickly told them no, and that would have been the end of the story. Also, one was led to believe that I offered Jamie Dimon the job of Secretary of Treasury, but that would be one that he would be very interested in. The problem is, I have Scott Bessent doing a fantastic job, a superstar. Why would I give it to Jamie? No, such offer was never made here or even thought of either. The Wall Street Journal ought to do better fact checking, or its already strained credibility will continue to die. Thank you for their attention on this matter. So Trump doesn't care. He is going after Jamie Dimon, and this could be very interesting for the financial markets, for what's happening. We know that JP Morgan has a lot of influence on what happens in the market, what happens in the crypto market, what happens in the regular market. And so this is going to be very interesting going forward to see how this is eventually going to play out. What could rock the markets a little bit more Monday or Tuesday, actually, because there's no trading on Monday this week because of Martin Luther King Day. Breaking, President Trump announces a 10% tariff on Denmark, Norway, Sweden, France, Germany, the UK, Netherlands, and Finland beginning on February 1st. This tariff will increase to 25% beginning on June 1st. The tariffs will remain in effect until the U.S. reaches a deal to buy Greenland. It is time for Denmark to give back, Trump says. He says, we have subsidized Denmark and all of the countries of the European Union and others for many years by not charging them tariffs or any other form of remuneration. I don't know this word. English is my second language, by the way. Now, after centuries, it is time for Denmark to give back. World peace is at stake. China and Russia want Greenland, and there is not a thing that Denmark can do about it. They currently have two dog sleds as protection. One added recently. Only the United States of America under President Donald J. Trump can play in this game, and very successfully at that. Nobody will touch this sacred piece of land, especially since the national security of the United States and the world at large is at stake. On top of everything else, Denmark, Norway, Sweden, France, Germany, the UK, the Netherlands, and Finland have journeyed to Greenland for a purpose unknown. It is a very dangerous situation for safety, security, and survival of the planet. These countries who are playing this very dangerous game have put a level of risk in play that is not tenable or suitable. Therefore, it is impressive that in order to protect global peace and security, strong measures be taken so that we potentially perilous situation end quickly without question. Starting on February 1st, all of them will get the 25%. Okay. And so this is a very interesting situation that's going on here. Remember that it's not just a strategic area, Greenland. Of course, this totally opens up shipping routes, shorter shipping routes or better shipping routes, especially where the situation with the melting ice caps and melting of the Arctics. It's easier to maneuver in these areas. It's also away from potential Russia over Europe to the US, right? But there's also a lot of rare earth metals in Greenland, right? And right now, China dominates that area. Remember that when we had the October 10th sell-off, part of it was that the days before there was fighting about these rare earth metals, that China was potentially going to stop the exports to the United States of America. These are very, very important in everything that has to do with AI and batteries and all that. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens with Greenland or what happens eventually. It's a very small population wise, but massive country, but very small population. And we'll see how it plays out. Maybe President Trump will offer them some money. We'll see how it plays out. Of course, Denmark doesn't want to give it up because it's a very important for them as well. I've been watching some videos about it recently, so I know a little bit about it, but it's going to be very interesting to see what happens with Greenland. And of course, any geopolitical situation that could put turmoil is fear for the markets, okay? So we need to take that into consideration as well when we're looking towards next week. Now, another thing I wanted to talk to you guys about is the current situation with inflation. Breaking US inflation index has dropped to 1.56, even though the official data still says 2.7. This is a huge gap, and most people are not paying attention to it. There are two sources of US inflation. One is the BLS CPI, which is the official number everyone follows. The other is Trueflation, which tracks prices in real time. BLS CPI is delayed. It shows what inflation was last month. True inflation shows what inflation looks like right now. So today, the BLS is 2.7, the true inflation is 1.57. This is massive difference. It means inflation is already well below the Fed's 2% target in real time, even though the official data still says inflation is too high. So we'll potentially find out about this in the next coming months. And it could be that the Fed is going to be too late, right? President Trump has been pushing this, that he keeps saying that the Fed is too late on the interest rate reduction. Well, could this be coming around the mountain? And we'll find out in a couple of months. This is not new. True inflation has historically predicted US CPI accurately. In 2021, BLS CPI was still showing 3 to 4%. True inflation was already warning that inflation was much higher. Months later, BLS CPI exploded to over 8%. The Fed panicked, hiked rates aggressively, and started quantitative tightening. Now the same thing is happening, but in reverse. Trueflation is showing inflation is falling fast. It is already near 1.5%. That means BLS CPI is likely to fall toward 2% or lower in the next few months. This completely changes the Fed's story. Right now, the Fed is still acting like inflation is a problem, but real-time data shows inflation is already gone. I don't know if you are feeling this in the US. Do you feel that inflation is gone or is not gone, but stalled, right? That would mean that you're feeling that prices are stalling. They're not going up anymore. They're stalling, or they're going up at a shorter rate or lower rate, right? At the same time, the economy is getting weaker. ISM is still below 50. This is, again, ISM is another thing that we need to watch out for in the next coming months. When we see ISM over 50, that will give us indication that the economy is getting stronger, right? Bankruptcies are rising and growth is slowing. So now the Fed has a problem. Inflation is dropping fast, but growth is also slowing fast. That is exactly the situation where central banks are forced to ease. This is why 2026 is shaping up to be the easing year. Rate cuts, liquidity injections, support the markets. Everyone is watching the 2.7 CPI number and thinking that inflation is still too high. But real-time inflation is already much lower. By the time the official CPI catches up, the policy shift will already be late. This is how the Fed always reacts. They move based on backward-looking data. Markets move based on forward-looking reality, right? And so right now, forward-looking inflation is already telling us the inflation fight is basically over and more easing will happen in 2026. This also explains why Trump keeps pushing the Fed to cut rates faster. He has said many times that rates are being held too high while the economy is already slowing. If real inflation is closer to around 1.6, then the Fed is reacting to old data, not current conditions. This is something that the Fed has had a problem with over the past 5 years. Since basically the pandemic, they are always late. They're always reacting late. And that's one of the big stripes that President Trump has with Powell. He calls him too late Powell because he keeps making these decisions too late. He was too late to raise interest rates. He's too late to reduce interest rates, right? He was saying, oh no, there's no inflation. We're not having a situation. And then inflation started going bananas, right? So he's been late multiple times. And now, listen, this is going to put pressure on Powell more about, President Trump telling him he needs to reduce interest rates. But if the numbers are telling us there's inflation is dropping, and the job market is weak, right, then he has to reduce interest rates aggressively. So this is going to be a very interesting next 6 months, and we'll see again how the markets play out and how the markets react to this. It is going to be very, very interesting. As always, this video was for educational purposes, for entertainment purposes only, not financial advice. Always do your own due diligence before you decide to invest. Don't forget to smash the like button. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you next time.